Hi, everyone, and welcome to our chill out class. This is our August 2024 class inside the Living on Lemonade group. As you can maybe hear or see if you're watching the video version, I have a bit of a cold. It kind of came in hot and heavy last night. I'm hoping it leaves just as quickly. It's like I just need a purge or something. I don't know. So I'm feeling a little crummy, and I did consider postponing, but I thought, you know what? I love this topic. I feel okay. I'm kind of just chilling. I took a few minutes to just kind of take some breaths and sink in. I'm in my cozies. And after we finish here, I'm going to go to bed. So, all right. Looks like I'm good in both places. I always record on Zoom as well, so then I can use it easily for the podcast and YouTube channel. So today we are going to talk about the Wim Hof method. Now, I want to say right off the bat, I am not a Wim Hof practitioner. I do practice the method. I have not taken the course to be a practitioner. It's on my bucket list. I even applied for it, I think last year or maybe earlier this year. I can't remember. It was a while ago. I was accepted, but then I just didn't pull the trigger. So it's something I would love to do. I would love to go through the full training and then actually study with Wim himself. But we'll see when I can do that. Um, if there's any questions along the way, if anyone's popping on live. So far, I don't see anyone, but sometimes things just don't show up properly. Maybe I'll check. I'm gonna check on my phone quick. Looks like I'm good. Okay. Let me see here. All right. So where to start? I thought I would share a little bit, I guess, about my intro to Wim Hof and my journey, and then I think we'll go into more of like the science around it, if that works. Um, my first experience with the Wim Hof method, I'd heard about it while I was at the Coast Guard College. One of my classmates would do like he'd do like ice baths in his bath, but I never tried it. I thought that was like crazy because, I was the girl who wears sweaters in Cuba kind of thing. So that was never on my radar, never of interest to me. And then right as COVID was breaking out, I had just flown out to BC to visit one of my besties. And we took a quick trip up to a little border town that borders Alaska up in BC. And just as happenstance, someone she knows from high school was up there working, and they ended up having a day free. So we hung out, and he was the one who introduced us to the Wim Hof method and invited us to go and do like a cold plunge in this glacier-fed river. Now, it was funny because we happened to have our bathing suits with us because we were planning to stop at the hot springs on the way home. And so, yeah, otherwise we would not have had our bathing suits with us in March. And so he gave us a bit of an intro, kind of um not official breath work. Like he gave us kind of the gist of it, but we didn't do like full rounds like I do now. And then we went into the river, and it was super cold. There was snow all around us. It was glacier fed, so it was obviously like just above freezing. It was very invigorating, and I remember just like having it, just you kind of have this feeling of euphoria after. And we wrapped towels around ourselves and then had our coats on kind of the snowbank, and we were laying on it. But I remember just like not feeling cold and not really having goosebumps. I don't know, it was just this like amazing feeling. We just felt I remember feeling very clear-minded, just sharp and so energetic for the next like 24 hours. And that was my first intro. And then we did it at least one more time while I was out west with Hill. And we like hiked into this lake and did a dip. And I also remember after that we were just that giggly, and probably someone thought we were like on drugs or something, but we weren't. And just super. I don't know, just like high on life, I guess you would call it. Wim says get high on your own supply. And I'll explain a little bit of the science around that on like there is science to explain that. So before I roll too much further, I forgot to do a couple breaths and I clearly need it because I'm like going off on tangents. So we're just going to take a moment wherever you are in your day. We're going to take a pause. Hand over heart if you want. Eyes open, eyes closed. Take 3 or 4 big deep breaths. Check in with yourself first on a scale of 1 to 10. How are you feeling? Do you feel any pain in your body? Do you feel any tension? Are your shoulders up near your ears? Do you need to drop them? Is your tongue on the top of your roof of your mouth? Do you need to relax your jaw? Take some deep breaths. Inhaling through your nose, exhaling through your nose or mouth, whatever feels good. You need to do a big sigh. That can feel really nice. And just make sure that your exhale is longer than your inhale so that you're telling your body that it's okay to relax, sending it those signals for the parasympathetic state. Just check in with yourself. How are you doing? What do you need? You need to do a little bit of movement back and forth, side to side, shake it out a little bit. Allow your mind to quiet a little and tune into your body, see what it needs. You can continue if you need that now. Just looking over my notes. Another thing, just as part of my journey. So I actually hate cold showers. I find it, I'm probably think this is bizarre, but I actually prefer to walk into a cold lake than take a cold shower. I don't know why. I just don't like the cold water like pelting on me, but it's something I do want to kind of overcome and have it in my tool belt of practices. However, in the winter, as long as it's not all iced in, I can use I go to a boat launch. So one thing one of my favorite parts of the Wim Hof method is doing it after a night shift because it helps to energize me and so I'm not sluggish all day, clear my mind, and yeah, I feel more awake and it kind of helps me get through the day. So then I have a good sleep as well. The fresh air is always nice and the cold. It's very invigorating, right? So I wouldn't recommend doing it before bed. Okay, we're gonna get into some of the benefits, and I can always come back to share a bit more about my journey or experiences with it because I think probably laying some of the foundation of the science and biology around it will be helpful. So essentially, what is the Wim Hof method? There's 3 components to it. There's breathwork, mindset/meditation, and cold exposure. And they all go hand in hand. They all are components to have like the full on effects. In terms of, we'll start with the breath work. So I'll explain how you actually do it, and then I'll give you some of the science behind it. So for the breath work, you're going to take a full inhale, and then you're going to exhale about 3/4 of the way. So there's still going to be some air in your lungs. Now, you do that 25 to 30 times, but you don't pause in between. So it's just like inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And you find a cadence that works for you, but you're not holding it either at the top or the bottom. It's just kind of like an up and a down. You do that 25 to 30 times. Then you do a full exhale, all the air out of your lungs, and you just retain it for as long as feels comfortable. When you get that trigger feeling that you need to take an inhale, for me, it happens really quickly. Like once I get that feeling, within 5 seconds, I have to take a big deep breath. Then you do a full inhale, you hold a full breath for 15 seconds, and then you start the up and down again, or go back to normal breathing, depending on how many rounds you're going to do. When I practice it, I normally do 3 rounds, and then I return to normal breathing. Always, always, always make sure that you're safe. You do not do this breath work in the water. You do not do it while you're driving. You do it when you're safe. So I actually lay down, and or if I'm at the place where I'm going to go in the cold water, my car's parked, engine's off, I put my seat back, I recline it, and then I do my breath work in the car. Sometimes I'll do it at home just on the floor, and then go drive where I need to go to do the cold dip, depending on what I'm feeling. So here's the biology of the breath work. The deep breaths increase oxygen, right? You're taking these big deep breaths, so you're increasing the oxygen in your lungs, which then increases the oxygen in your blood. The oxygen converts to carbon dioxide and water in the mitochondria of the cells in your body. So the mitochondria they're like the powerhouse part of the cells. They are in charge of producing energy. So you're using your breath, you're essentially over oxygenating your blood and your body. It is normal to feel tingling in your extremities. You can feel a little lightheaded. You have to kind of play within in your, know your boundaries and play within them. If you have a medical condition, maybe you just clear it with your doctor first before you try this, and make sure it's safe for you. Also, this method, it does stimulate your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response. So if you've been like super stressed out, or you tend to have a lot of anxiety, this might not be the best time for you. You can kind of do your own reading and stuff and decide if it's the right thing for you. Because as much as I love it, I also have, the awareness that this isn't for everyone, but I do want to share it because there are so many benefits for those who it's right for. Now, yeah, so I was talking about the mitochondria of our cells. They're like the powerhouse. They create energy so that we can exercise and like go about our day and do the movements that we need to do. The mitochondria of our cells, after we flood them with oxygen, that it then converts to carbon dioxide, which is our byproduct, the waste byproduct. Christine, is it recording okay if you're still here? Something keeps popping up on Facebook and it's saying that the frames per second is too low. So I just want to make sure that it's recording okay. I guess worst case, I just pop in the Zoom one. The mitochondria uses the oxygen to create ATP. That's the adenosine triphosphate. Sorry, I'm getting like tongue-tied here. ATP provides the energy to the cell. ATP is used for exercise, both is it aerobically and anaerobically? So aerobically is with oxygen, anaerobically is without oxygen. The anaerobic one is the one that creates lactic acid and makes you feel like you have that burning sensation in your muscles when you're overexerting and you're not getting enough oxygen to them. That's what that anaerobic is. And then the aerobic is when you actually have enough oxygen and your body's able to create the energy that you need. The a couple of the benefits of ATP is it's used to provide energy to the cell, so it enhances exercise or whatever you're doing. It can also be used in pain management, which is really interesting. When another thing I want to note before we move along from the breathing part is when you're doing the up and down, you're over oxygenating the blood. So then when you fully exhale, your body has a surplus of oxygen in it. Now, when we think about the autonomic nervous system, which is all the processes that happen that we don't think about or control, breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, carbon dioxide, which is the byproduct after it goes through the mitochondria and it's like the waste, is the carbon dioxide is required to trigger our autonomic nervous system to breathe. It tells our body when it needs to breathe. When it builds up, then we need to breathe. So when we over-oxygenate our body, it pushes that carbon dioxide out, expels it. So then we can go longer without air, oxygen in our lungs, before we have that urge to breathe. So this is why the more rounds that you do, so by the time I get to the third round, I'm retaining without oxygen in my lungs longer than the first round because I have more buildup of oxygen, which is really cool. Because I always kind of wondered that. Why, like if someone had told me a few years ago, oh, you'll be able to lay comfortably for, 2 or 2.5 minutes without oxygen in your lungs, I would have said, that's crazy. No way. But you do it, and that's just the science behind it. So that's kind of the biology of the breath work part. It's prepping your body for what you're about to do. It's getting it, it's getting it like primed. It's also stimulating your sympathetic nervous system, which releases adrenaline and cortisol, which usually is not a good thing, but in this case, it's prepping your body for the cold. So it is a good thing because it's not like a chronic low grade thing and it's short lived, right? So adrenaline and cortisol aren't bad chemicals. It's just when it's like our norm, our baseline, it is very destructive. And I'm going to get to that right now with the mindset meditation concentration part of the method. So mindset is very important with this method because without the meditative approach to it, we wouldn't be able to overcome and actually do it. We wouldn't be able to like kind of wrap our brains around it and get our own way. Because when you think about it, willingly walking into like 2 degree Celsius water doesn't really make sense because it totally puts your body into survival mode like immediately. So you have to be able to have the right mindset to know that, hey, my body's going to have a reaction, but there's health benefits to this mind and body, soul, that make it okay to do. And then, prepping it is half the battle. It's also mindset is also the resiliency piece, right? Sorry, my nose is kind of running. It helps us to realize our inner strength because there was a time when I would have said, no way, there's no way I can go into cold water. And now I'm like, I can do it. I don't always like the beginning, but I know how to get over that hump of when it's really uncomfortable. And I find I get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And that's where we start to learn that we can handle what things are thrown at us. And I take it as a direct kind of metaphor or analogy. And one of my sayings now that I've been doing this for a while is if you can breathe through the cold, you can breathe through life. So I actually use breath work when I start to feel dysregulated just in my day-to-day. I find myself automatically going to my breath. Now that wasn't always an intuitive thing for me. But I find like as soon as I start to feel dysregulated a little bit, my hand finds its way to my chest over my heart, and I start to just kind of focus on my breath a little bit. And I go, oh, okay, like what's going on here? And I can self-regulate. So it's been magical that way, and that just knowing that like I can do hard things and willingly putting ourselves in those positions where we can still be doing it safely But knowing that it's a difficult thing, it's a challenge, then you know, like that's where the resilience building comes from, and then it extends into other areas of our life, right? Let me know if there's any questions, any comments along the way. So far, I'm not seeing any comments, but I'll keep an eye out. Hopefully this is working okay. So to keep going with the mindset part, the concentration and meditation part, it I guess there's other stuff to it as well, but it helps us to influence our autonomic nervous system and our immune system, which is super, super cool. Previous to the studies that Wim Hof has participated in with different universities and medical centers and scientists and doctors, it was always understood that our autonomic system is just as it says, autonomic. We have no influence or control over it. But Wim has been rewriting that script and showing that, yes, we can influence our autonomic nervous system. We can work with it. And as kind of a byproduct in relation to that, we can also influence our own immune system and kick it up to function better. So I'm going to tell you quickly about a study that Wim was part of. This was a few years ago. I want to say around 2011, but don't quote me on that, especially because I feel like my brain's mush just with me feeling a little bit off kilter. He worked with Radboud University in the Netherlands, and he was part of this study where they had 112 participants that they injected with components of E. coli. So this would be deactivated or dead. So it's not actual E. coli, but there's like parts of it. Enough that the idea is by injecting it into these people, it would trigger an immune response so that they could measure it. And what they were doing is they were taking blood beforehand to see how things were. And then they were taking blood after to see what the levels were in terms of like inflammation and immune response, all the markers that would change to indicate that they were having an immune response, that their immune system was kicked up and fighting. Also, it's pretty easy to see that when someone's having an immune response with that type of thing, they're showing flu-like symptoms. They could be achy, yeah, just feeling like very unwell, right? Now, with Wim, they allowed him to do his breath work and his mindset stuff beforehand. I don't think he did any cold stuff. It was literally just the breath work and his meditative state, his mindset stuff. And what they noticed was he had almost no reaction to the E. coli. He said that symptom-wise, he felt a mild headache for a time, but outside of that, it showed in his blood work that he had like the markers weren't elevated in terms of an immune response. So he was able to, with the Wim Hof method, actually suppress his immune system by activating the sympathetic nervous system, so his fight or flight response. Because when we're in a state of fight or flight, adrenaline, cortisol is released, it suppresses the immune system. So when we look back to previous topics I've talked about when it comes to stress, especially chronic stress and long term, when I talk about how you're more susceptible to getting sick because your immune system gets broken and you can get more chronic illnesses, autoimmune especially. This is because if we're in a state of kind of chronic fight or flight, we have this cortisol and adrenaline just like going through our blood system the whole time. Our immune system is always kind of kicked down a little bit, right? Depending on how stressed we are. So most of the people, when they were injected with E. coli, felt the flu-like symptoms. Wim had a mild headache, the blood work showed less than half the number of inflammatory proteins compared to the others, which is remarkable. Now, they could have just said, they're kind of like, oh, well, maybe he's just a freak of nature because he's been training and doing this for decades now. And he said, no, anyone can do this. I can train them. Yeah, okay, so that part. Sorry, I'm just making sure. I gotta follow my notes. Otherwise, I'm just like, I feel kind of grounded, but also not. I think it's just because I'm feeling a little off. So, yes, thank you for your patience. So part 2 of that study, because he said, like, I can train people. I'm not the only one. I'm not a freak of nature. People can do this. So he took 24 participants, 12, half was a control group, and the other half were trained by him. He took them, the training was 10 days, 4 days with Wim in Poland. He taught them the breath work, the mindset, the cold exposure. And the remaining 6 days, they were doing cold showers and breath work and mindset on their own at home. And then all of them came together. So you've got the 12 in the control group, the 12 that he trained, and they were all injected with the E. coli components again, or sorry, injected with them first time. These are new people. The results, Wim's group had less signs of flu. So when they looked at those inflammatory markers in the blood, they were also decreased compared to the control group who did not train under Wim's method. They also noticed that the body temperature didn't increase as much as the control group. So body temperature, you get fever, right? Fever, chills, achy muscles, clammy skin. Their body temperature didn't increase as much. So you know that then the immune system isn't. Oh, Christine, how is it for you? Autumn says that the connection's going in and out, so I don't know if it's my end. I'm gonna keep going. Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'll post it. I'll post the Zoom one right after and replace it. Okay, I'm sorry about this. Maybe I should have just gone live on my phone. Okay, we're gonna move along here. We're gonna move on to the cold exposure. Ah, crud. You know what? Give me a second. I'll go live again, but just on my phone, okay? So I'm going to pause Zoom for a sec. 1 second. Okay, we'll keep going. And I'm just gonna post the Zoom one after. So bear with me. Thank you for your patience. Okay, cold exposure. This is the third one. Cold is essential to accessing the autonomic nervous system. All of those automatic processes and influencing them. The breath work preps the body to endure the cold by activating the sympathetic nervous system, so our fight or flight response. And then the cold exposure also activates the immune system. So first you're activating the sympathetic nervous system to get your body ready. But then when you actually go into the cold, you're gonna have a shock response, but there are benefits to increasing your immune system capacity or just like kind of activating it. What do I got here? I have like chicken scratch notes. Okay, so the cold also increases your metabolic rate, so your metabolism, to keep your body warm, which is interesting, right? Of course, it's a survival thing. Now, what I'll tell you is from my experience, when you go into the water, it's like it's cold, or when you have your shower, I go in waist deep. For me, I do a lot of the dips by myself because it's hard sometimes. Hi, Christine. Sometimes it's hard to find someone who wants to go with me. Christine will go with me when she's available. But a lot of the dips that I do are by myself. So I have to be very mindful, and I work for the Coast Guard too, right? So I'm very much like, I know the dangers of cold water and how quickly it will drain our body of heat and stuff, and how quickly hypothermia can start. I don't think people realize that even when water's kind of warmer, it's if it's still it's shocking how warm the water might feel, but you can still get hypothermia from it, put it that way. When I go in hip deep. I usually have like a stick with me, and I go in at a boat launch. I also wear shoes so that I have a little bit more grip. I'm very careful with my footing. The boat launch that I go to has this kind of stepping thing that you can walk along if you're taking your boat in or out. So I hold on to that. I'm like holding on to things. I'm walking in. I only go in hip deep, and then I dip down. I crouch. That way, if something happens, I could probably if I were to like fall, like my hands could be on the ground, like on the bottom of the water. And that's just for my own safety. As soon as my core, which as we know, like when you get cold, it draws away from your extremities because the important parts are your organs, right? The tips of your fingers get blue or a little bit off color, that your nail beds will look blue or purple. Your lips can turn purple. The extremities, the blood leaves from your extremities. It can feel cold, numb, tingly, and goes into preserve your organs, because when you willingly do a cold dip, your body is still having a physiological response going, what the hell? We're in danger, like mayday, mayday, right? Like it thinks that you're in grave danger. Now, this is why we don't do it long, but we have to just be aware of those responses. The other thing is, once you actually put your core in, that's when you have that shock response. So you take like a deep, I take like a sharp inhale, like, right? It's the same if you jump in a pool at the beginning of the year or jump in the lake, right? You have that like, oh my God. The difference is after you've done the breath work and you use your mindset, you continue that breath work knowing that you're going to have that sharp breath. Your body's going to want to go into like an autonomic state where you're hyperventilating because it's cold and your body goes into shock, but you can override it, and you just make sure that you're taking deeper breaths, slower, and within a few seconds, you can be back to a regular breathing cycle and be comfortable in the uncomfortable. Okay, so talking more about cold exposure. I was telling you about how it increases our metabolic rate, it activates our immune system. This is by producing more white blood cells. White blood cells help to fight infection, fight any kind of bugs we're getting, like this cold that I have, and any diseases that threaten our body, any pathogens that our bodies perceive as a threat. And that includes autoimmune diseases, right? Because autoimmune situate like disorders, diseases, situations, illnesses, um, is essentially our body attacking itself. So when we can do things that increase the ability of our immune system to function, increasing our white blood cells, that helps to deal with our situation too, right? It also increases cold exposure, also increases the level of brown fat tissue. Now, this was not a term that I was familiar with before I started diving into the Wim Hof method. I didn't know we had brown fat, or I actually came to know that as babies we have lots of brown fat because our body has a harder time kind of regulating homeostasis. So the brown fat helps when we're cold to keep ourselves warm. We shiver, of course, too. Um, it is designed to generate body heat faster to maintain our body temperature homeostasis. It has the ability to convert energy, which is glucose and body fat, directly into body heat, which is really cool. So what is it called? It's called an uncoupling protein. Uncoupling protein 1 is in brown fat, which gives it a direct link so that the process happens really quickly. And it just goes from this fat to creating an energy, a source of energy, a source of heat in our body. So Wim Hof has been studied. He has a lot of brown fat because he is well practiced. He regularly exposes himself to extreme cold. This is why he could like climb Mount Everest in like shorts and run marathons in the Arctic in shorts and not freeze to death. And there was one instance he kind of did mess up his foot with some frostbite, but the things that he has Guinness World Records with are just like you think it's superhuman, but he's optimizing the function of his own body through his own biology, which is just incredible. Where am I? Comparing brown fat to white fat has less mitochondria. That's the other thing. Brown fat has a lot of mitochondria, and if we remember earlier in the this class, mitochondria is the powerhouse energy maker of our cells. So when you have these cells that are powered with more mitochondria, they have the ability to make more energy. White white fat does not. It has less. It also does not have the uncoupling protein. So it doesn't have that protein that allows it to streamline and connect and convert to energy right away like the brown fat does. I'm going to talk about a study at Wayne County University in Detroit that Wim was a part of a few years ago. What they did, they were studying other people too, but we'll talk about him in this situation because how he differs from kind of the average person because of his method. What they were doing is they were putting people in a suit that would pump cold and warm water through it to study body temperature and body temperature changes. Now, he was able, I think he did breath work first, and then he used his meditative state during the first part of the test because then they later added to it. But essentially when they with anyone normal, so they actually tested him without the breath work, and when they pumped the cold water through, his body temperature would go up and down. I don't think it went up and down as much as like the average person, but it did have some fluctuation. Then they let him do his breath work and prep his body for going into the cold, essentially, right? And use his mind, his concentration, his meditative state. Did it again. He was able to sustain the body temperature. In fact, he had like 300 times more energy output from his chest, which was the brown fat activating to keep his body warm. And they found that during a study where he was in ice water for like, I think it was 80 minutes or something like that. And he was able to keep his body temperature regulated. Now, these are things that body temperature is autonomic, part of the autonomic nervous system, right? But he was able to influence it through both his breath work and the concentration and the meditation. They were so intrigued by him, and I don't know, I mean, I wasn't there, but I don't know if this was like a natural progression or something they added on, but either way, they did a second element to it. They put him in an fMRI machine so that they could look at what his brain was doing while he was doing this. And anyone who's had an MRI knows that you can't move, right? So when he's in this machine, he cannot do his breath work because he would move too much, and it would mess up the readings. So I don't know if he may have done breath work first and then was concentrating on the mindfulness, the meditation part during, but they saw changes. His brain reacted differently than the average person. And one of the things that activated in him, and this is something I guess is available to those two, especially if they practice like meditation regularly and are very practiced with meditation, is that actually tapped into the deeper parts of the brain, the midbrain, which is closer to the stem cell, and the stem cell is like the first part of our brain in our evolution. It's attached to our central nervous system, right? Central nervous system is our spine and our stem cell in our brain. Or yeah, that part there. They noticed that I forget what part of the brain, like what the name of it was. I'm blanking right now. But it was essentially tapping into the deeper parts of the brain that are said to be ina inaccessible by what's the word? By like conscious creation, right? Like we can if it's accessible, it's autonomically, right? But he was able to tap into those parts of his brain, and what one of the things that can happen is it can release endocannabinoids. Endocannabinoids are hormones that can interact and kind of block pain receptors. So it can be used for pain management. The other part of that is cannabinoids. When you think of like cannabis, it is our body's production of this. Cannabis is a plant, as we know, right? But our body produces something similar, these endocannabinoids in our brain. It's a hormone. So he was tapping into that source and releasing it into his brain, into his body. And one of the byproducts or symptoms, however you want to say it, is it can give you a sense of euphoria. So when I was talking about how we just felt like high on life and just like super energetic and super happy and we're giggling, we were tapping into that midbrain through the cold, because you get that euphoric feeling. You just feel larger than life. And the only thing that I wasn't able to understand, which I'm pretty sure it was the brown fat now, is when I get out of the water, not only are my legs super pink, my skin's pink, which is a sign of good circulation, which you would think going into cold water when things are constricting, you would be getting um you would be losing color, right? As things leave the extremities and go towards your core. But because the breath work made me more oxygenated, I had sufficient circulation. So when I get out, I'm pink. And I also feel this sense of like, I call it warm from the inside out. And I think that's that extra, I don't know if I have much brown fat, but I think it's that kind of process, or at least my body's trying to build some, right? To help me be more resilient to the cold exposure. Um, Let me see here. Yeah, that's okay. I have those nuts done. I think I'm gonna wind down. We're getting close. Are there any questions? If you're watching the replay or you're listening to it as a podcast episode, reach out. I'm happy to answer them if I can. I'm not an expert, but I've done a lot of reading on this. It's hard not to, I don't want to go too deep. I'm also like learning different layers and going deeper with the understanding of what's actually happening in the body. Um, but it's something I'm very passionate about, and I think it's just really, I think it's so fascinating that Wim Hof is showing us how we can access the deeper parts of our own physiology to live a healthier life without pharmaceuticals, essentially. He is involved, I believe it's with I want to say the University of San Francisco. It's in California. I think it's San Francisco. They're doing studies now on how his method can help people with depression, anxiety, chronic illness. And I'm always fascinated to see where it's going next and how we can just use our own physiology, our own biology to heal ourselves, or just live more optimally, right? And function more optimally. Okay, I'm just looking over my notes here. So I did talk about how to do the breath work. Safety around the Wim Hof method. Again, make sure you're not doing the breath work in the water. Super dangerous. Don't do it while you're driving. Make sure that you're in a safe place. Safe place. Just as like if you want to lay down for a nap, you're gonna do it in the same place you would lay down for a nap. Um, and then water safety too, right? I obviously have to emphasize that. Have a buddy with you if possible. I do. I like to have a buddy with me, even if they're just on shore. But when I am by myself, I take those extra measures. I wear shoes. I only go waist deep. I bring a stick with, excuse me, I keep hiccuping. Bring a stick with me. I'm like walking along the wall using it. And the other thing is I time myself, but also I listen to my body. I'm like, when you're doing this and you're in the cold, you can't think of much else. Like once you get kind of relaxed, you can a little bit, but you're still very focused on your physiology because it is cold, especially when you're going like if I go in the winter, it's like just above freezing. I've gone in the water when there's like slushies around me and it's like cutting my legs on the way out. So don't know if I'd recommend that, but um you become very aware of like what's happening in your body, and that's a good practice too because you're learning how to get in your body, you're learning those cues, and you start to create a deeper relationship with your own body. As soon as my motor function starts to feel a little bit compromised, my feet start to feel numb in my shoes. I notice that my hands, my fingers start to be a little bit slower in response. That is my indication to get out of the water just for safety reasons. I'm not going to stay in when I'm starting to lose some motor function and stuff, especially when I'm by myself. So as soon as I start to feel those types of things in my body, I know like, okay, I'm good. I've been in, I try to do like a couple minutes, 3 minutes. It depends on the time of year, what the air temperature is doing, if it's windy, if the what the water temperature is. Um I'm very aware of how my body feels when I'm doing it, and I'm not afraid to just be like, "Okay, we're good," even if it's 30 seconds, and then I get out. Now, ways you can start if this is something you want to try. First, if you have a medical condition or you don't know if this is the right thing for you, maybe talk to your doctor before you try it. And also, you can start with cold showers if you don't want to like walk into a lake or one's not accessible to you, right? And to be honest, they don't have to be freezing cold showers to start. The whole point of this, especially if you just want it as like a resiliency practice so that you can build your confidence and like try hard things, because one of the things that Wim talks about a lot is how we have we as a society have disconnected ourselves from the our own nature, the fact that we are nature. When you think about it, widely, at least in Western society, we bundle ourselves with clothes in the winter to keep warm. We crank the heat during that time so we're cozy in our homes. And then in the summertime, we crank the AC so that we're comfortable. And we're kind of just like trying to keep this same temperature all the time, this baseline. We're not giving our physiology a challenge. And I honestly think that's to our own detriment because when you think about our evolution, we certainly were doing more out in nature and giving ourselves a challenge to our body, right? So this is an opportunity to have a controlled, challenging experience. And you could just turn it cold enough that it's uncomfortable. It doesn't have to be freezing. It doesn't have to feel like ice cubes. Just turn it cold enough that you get that like, whoa, a little bit like that, just uncomfortable. And play with it. Do a few seconds. Maybe you just turn around, let it hit your back, and you're like, hey, that's enough. And then you can start to build up your tolerance and your mindset around showing up and doing it. When I started, it was like, yeah, 20, 30 seconds in the water. Um, Now I can do several minutes depending on, like I said, the weather conditions. Christine says, if I can open it. Why can't I open it? I'm trying to see more. There we go. She says, I've had varying success with the swims I've done with you. I really notice that the difference is always my mental state and how well I've regulated it before the swim. Yes. So, like I was saying at the beginning, for anyone who missed it, get a little curious if while you're deciding if this is for you, and do your own research too. Don't like I'm presenting a bunch of information to you, but if there's something that you're like, ooh, I'm interested in that, like start doing some research on it. The Wim Hof Method website has lots of information. They also have an app. So I have the app on my phone. I just pay the yearly thing. They do guided breathing sessions. So I literally just listen to Wim guide me through the breathing exercises until I've done my 3 rounds. Um, he's been on all kinds of podcasts. Like I've watched interviews with him. I've listened to his audiobooks, like audiobook versions. I'll get a hard copy one of these days, but I was listening to it while I was like walking and stuff. I just love listening to him. He's so charismatic, and I get such a like such, I think he's I get such a hoot out of him, if that's the way to say that. I find him very, yeah, I'm at a loss for words. But I thoroughly enjoy listening to him talk about something he's so passionate about and something he's really bringing so much value to the world and healthcare and the future of it, right? Um, yeah, so there's lots of resources that you can look up. Do your own research, decide if it's for you. Like I said, because of the breath work, it is stimulating and activating the sympathetic nervous system. So it is normal when you're doing the breath work to feel a little lightheaded, to feel tingling in your extremities, maybe in your lips, maybe in your fingers, because it's I guess I can explain it, especially if you're doing it up and down a little bit faster. You can do it slower, but I do kind of the medium one. It's kind of like a controlled hyperventilation, just in the sense that you're taking full deep breaths and you're exhaling, but not all the way, and you're not stopping in between. So it's like an up and a down, up and a down. Now you get into the rhythm with it, but it's will still have those physiological effects on you. So you have to be able to play within your own boundaries. I will say that everyone's different, right? And if you've been in a state of stress and you have a lot of anxiety, it may or may not be for you at this time. It is wonderful for mental health, but these are um this is something he's diving into right now with these studies, right? So it'll be interesting to know some of the outcomes and the information that they're finding in terms of helping people deal with anxiety and depression. But I just wanted to say that because I don't want to like recommend this for you and then you end up in a panic attack because it does activate your sympathetic nervous system to start. So just you could try it out. I think if you go on YouTube, I think there's free guided ones through Wim that can take you through the breath work, and just try it. Try it on your own. Try it a little bit slower if you need to, and just kind of listen to your body. If your body is like, nah, this is not going down a good path, then slow your breath back down. Nice slow breaths like we do at the start of every class, right? So just you can play with it if you want, get curious, do your own research. Um, I love this. It changed my life. It's helped me to regulate myself when life gets a little bit unsettled, off kilter. When I am working a busy day at work and say I work a difficult case or just one that's like really like it's moving fast and I feel a little like I need to get grounded after, I'll go out and I'll do some hand over heart, I'll do some breathing. And because my work is right by the St. Clair River, there's a couple spots. There's either like a fountain on the kind of the boardwalk, the river walk, or there's a spot I can climb down some rocks and literally just put my feet in the water. So in the summer when it's like really busy, I will dip my feet in the water because it's very grounding. It brings me back into my body, right? Because like you feel it, but you come back into your body. I use like slow breath work at that time to just regulate my nervous system a little bit. Um, I think that's pretty much it. I feel like I was gonna also talk about how This is one instance, and I've talked about it in, I don't know if I've talked about it in different episodes. I feel like I've mentioned it, but I've also talked about it in training in some of the paid courses. But this is one instance where it actually really helped my anxiety. It didn't fully rid me of it, but I can tell you that I was much better than I was before. So before my wedding, um, for those of you who don't know, my dad he battled multiple myeloma for 6 years, and it came back with a vengeance. He wasn't doing well. And one day I asked him, should I put a wedding together? And he said there would be no higher honor than to walk you down the aisle and see you get married to Eric. So I planned a wedding in 6 days. Not just me. Eric helped me, and my village came together. There were some beautiful miracles that came to pull it all together. But the night before the wedding, when my dad showed up, I had seen him about 48 hours earlier, and the amount that he had changed and how much weight he had lost, and there was just like he looked so ill. It put me I was beside myself with anxiety and just shock. I couldn't sleep. We didn't sleep till like 4 a.m. of the wedding day, and it was always my plan to go for a whim dip, like a whim swim before the wedding, just to kind of start the morning off on a good note, and just because it's revitalizing, but it also kind of helps ground me. So that morning, I noticed my anxiety was so heightened. This only has happened a couple times, but I was starting to feel like my body was my I was starting to feel like I was disconnecting from my body. I don't know if anyone has like experienced that, but it's super scary. And it almost feels like you're witnessing yourself outside of yourself. And to be honest, I did not want to witness myself outside of myself as I'm getting married. So I knew that I needed to do something to regulate my nervous system a little bit. Um, we went and did the breathing. We laid on the hill on our towels. My best friend Tori and I went in the water. And when I came out, I felt so much better. I was still dysregulated. When I look back at like how things happened, there were still kind of ways that I'm like, oh man, I would have done that differently had I been more regulated. But I was back in my body, and that was really the important thing. It really did save the day in so many ways. And it allowed me to be more present for a lot of it. But the truth was the situation was just very difficult. But I wouldn't have been able to witness it and be present the way that I was had I not done that breath work, gone in the cold and had that mindset, and just kind of like got back into my body and grounded. Um, so I have many thanks for this process, this method, and how it can help us in our everyday life. And just how like I was saying before, if I feel dysregulated, I find myself just putting my hand over my heart and just kind of holding it a little bit, getting conscious of my breath. And this really came to be through doing the Wim Hof method. So, yeah, I hope there's some nuggets in there for you. I'm gonna call it a night and go have a nice warm shower. I feel like I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. I think I mentioned it in passing, but I did want to like make sure before I finished in terms of like tips with how to get started. Take a shower. Um, I would recommend in the morning, right? Because it's like invigorating. It'll help you to get awake. So do that before you start your day or you're just getting ready for work. If you've listened to the class on sleep, you know that it's actually beneficial to have like a warm shower before bed because it increases your body temperature, which helps to kind of relax you and get you ready for sleep. And then it's actually best if the room temperature is a little bit cool to help you get those deeper sleep layers. Anyway, I can't think of words. I'm done. That's a whole other topic. So having said that, Wim Hof method is more for like daytime stuff because that gets you kind of invigorated and ready for the day. Whereas in the evening, you'll want something nice and warm to just like wind down. If you're going in on a night shift, then yeah, have a shower before work. But however that is, when you're starting your day, you can just be at the end of your shower I've read that it's good to put cool or cold water on your scalp anyway to help close the cuticles and on your face and stuff. So just finish it. Maybe you do like 10 seconds of just like cool water, enough that it's like a little bit uncomfortable, and just see where it goes. Try it every day, 10 seconds, and see where it goes. And if you do try it, tell me about it. I would love, love, love to hear how it is for you. Um, Christine says it really helped you get through a difficult day. It did. It changed the whole trajectory of the day. I would not have been able to cope with it the way that I did had I not done the method. So even though it wasn't perfect, there were still things that I wish could have been different. That's life, right? But it was definitely a much better experience having done that method. So, anywho, I'm gonna pop off and go have a nice warm shower and read in bed. I hope everyone's doing well. And if you have any questions, pop them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. And yeah, take care, everyone. Tomorrow is our second soul care hour. It's at 1 p.m. Pop into the Zoom if you'd like to just chat. It'll be lots of fun. So, all right. Take care, everyone, and we will see you soon. Nighty night.